Hi, everybody. Welcome to the ICLR Friday Forum for June 14th, 2024. I'm your host, Dr. Keith Porter, the ICLR Chief Engineer. I'm speaking to you from London, Ontario. This is webinar 218 in a series hosted by ICLR, the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, Canada's leading source for disaster resilience knowledge. Each month, we present recently completed research related to ICLR's mission to make Canada more resilient to natural disasters. Last month, Dr. Sherry Molnar told us about some new soil maps that are going to help us reduce future earthquake damage from landslides and liquefaction and shaking. And just last week, Bob Robichaux briefed us on the 2024 hurricane season. Next month, on July 12th, 2024, Mohammed Fareshtapur will give us lessons on how cities around the world do climate resilient stormwater management. But today we turn to construction practices. Our friend Patrick Foisey will tell us about good and bad roofing and siding. Patrick is an expert with 30 years of experience in property inspections and property insurance appraisals, including damage assessment after wildfires and floods and windstorms. Until recently, he taught and directed catastrophe and appraisals at Haag Canada. He now acts as a forensic roof consultant with property management companies, insurance, and a major roofing manufacturer. I particularly look forward to today's talk because I'm mostly a theory and computation guy. I like theory, but none of that theory matters unless you know how it gets put into practice. You have to know the nuts and the bolts and the nails and the plywood. And to know how the theory goes wrong, you have to know what went wrong with those things in real buildings at the level of materials and components and connections. Patrick is an expert on those things. So that's why I'm keen to hear what he has to say. Before our speaker begins, here's our agenda. Our webinar is going to last about 90 minutes. Our speaker will present for about half that time. Then I'll moderate Q&A for the rest of the time. Please feel free to chat your questions into the Q&A box, not the chat box, but the Q&A box. I will try to pose your questions in the order that they appear in the Q&A box. If we get a lot of questions, I may only pose your first one, then move on to others, then circle back to your additional questions. Our webinar is recorded. ICLR will post the slides for today and a link to the video on Monday or so. So if you have colleagues who couldn't attend, let them know. They'll find the video and a PDF of Patrick's deck at www.iclr.org/workshops. Thanks again, Patrick, and take it away.
Well, thank you, Keith. I'll just get started, everybody. So the agenda, a little bit of an introduction, understanding storm damage, and the forensic roof inspection process. I'll go over that, case studies and anecdotes, and the QA and discussion that Keith was just discussing. All right, a little bit of an introduction. When I'm out in the field, I protect my lunch because nothing's usually open or they're overcrowded. People weren't prepared, so I have these little lunch bags that I throw my lunch in. And then I found a new potential inspector to assist me. I'm hoping I can get a strap on him and a GoPro camera, go running around and taking the shots that I need. Anyway, so I work when I was with Haag Engineering, I work with the engineers. I do a lot of the assessments, the measurements, and then the photos that are required by the particular engineers. I also do pre-engineering inspections, so I help determine when do we need an engineer and where do we need to dial that engineer into place. Because it's not worth bringing an engineer to look at the whole property when we actually need them to do the math on this section. I work with roofing systems, residential and commercial, been at it since 1999. I deal with quality of manufacture and applications of roofing, specifically with one large manufacturer. Cause, nature, and extent of damage, particularly from hail, wind, or remaining service life is everything I live and breathe. So understanding storm damage, I'm not going to go too quick, I'm not going to go too slow on this. Everybody's pretty much that's on here is pretty much aware of what's going on. We have high winds that happens in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. Trees cause the most severe damage, but wind itself causes more dollars when it comes to insurance claims. with high winds, especially if we get events that are on the fringe. So, for example, I would have never heard this before, a summer snowstorm. But on September 6th, 3 years ago, we had a summer snowstorm in Calgary. The leaves were still on the tree, and ice was there on the trees. So 6 o'clock in the morning, when the wind kicked up, it started breaking branches. Here's a little question for you guys. Which of the following is a common sign of wind damage on a roof? Ponding water, blistering of membrane, missing or loose shingles, excessive moss growth. Which of the following is a common, so missing or loose shingles? Another with weather is hail. It used to be just the Calgary problem, actually, and it was just on the fringe all the time. But in Ontario, we've been doing catastrophes in the last 3-4 years, quite a bit of hail. We had one here in Niagara, so I'm based here in Niagara in Thorold, Ontario, and we had a big one in '99, and not much since then. But however, the Barrie area, Lindsay, they're getting splattered by hail. And last night there was a big storm that came through, so I didn't check to see what the results for that. What matters with hail is direction and collateral damage as well during our inspections. What are some signs of hail damage on the roof? A, discoloration of shingles. B, missing granules on shingles. C, rust on metal flashing. D, cracked chimney or bricks. Missing granules on shingles. Which of the following factors can affect the severity of hail damage to the property? Size of the hailstone, color of the affected surface, direction of the wind during the hailstorm, distance of the property from the water source. A, size of the hailstones. We get into a little bit with fire, and this is basically, I'm going to be talking today a little bit about fire in conjunction with exposure to it. So with direct and indirect heat sources. The house next door to this one burned down. This is Fort McMurray. I spent 3 years here, and this is a snapshot of, I think, 2-3 months worth of work of inspections that we did. It wasn't looking at these houses that are burned down. It's looking at the ones that are still standing up, and what are the extent of damages involved. Ash and soot in Fort McMurray was interesting because people, didn't expect it. They had some of their windows open, but this is in the attic. So we found ash and soot in the attic as well. So with fire, we have smoke damage and heat damage. How does reinforced concrete react to exposure to fire? It contacts and forces building walls inward. Stones in concrete may experience spalling when they are heated. Stones in concrete will crumble after exposure to the direct flame. It elongates and pushes building walls outwards. And I know Keith wants to jump in on this answer, but I'm not going to let him. B, stones in concrete may experience spalling when they are heated. You can see that when you have a sauna. We usually use granite in saunas, because if you use any other stones, they'll just blow up on you. When heated steel structures, elements tend to contract and cause walls to fall inward, crumble, elongate or push outwards, or D, spall. C, elongate and push outward. So forensic roof inspections. Get over here. So forensics in the context of roofing and building envelope involves investigating and analyzing building failures, defects, and damages. The goal is to determine the cause of these issues and develop solutions for repair and prevention. I'm going to be going through the process of how we start a file and an example of a file, and then move on from that point. So it's also generated by the scope of work. So the client's going to dictate. So the scope of work, the client will dictate the focus and what level investigation will go, because with forensics, we can go all the way to the manufacturer and then figure out the serial numbers, then go all the way into the lots. But a lot of times, insurance companies don't need us to go that far down. Some of the things that we look at when I work for an insurance carrier is the data loss. That is where it starts. Everything's about the data loss. That's when the damage was reported. And part of our forensics is to do a digital investigation to determine, does the data loss make sense? Here with for example, the weather, the Government of Canada sheets, I would go on and determine, what was the weather, what was the direction, does it make sense with the damages that are being seen? We use satellite photos, we use Google. We use tools like Nearmap and Eagle View. We look at online sources. We'll go through Google Street View. We go Google Earth, GIS. If you type in GIS in any city, generally you'll find an online map and access to historic rooftop photos. Nearmap is great in Canada now. Eagle View is every couple of years, but Nearmap's now on major cities in Canada, taking images every spring and every fall. So for the last 3 years, I can see before and after if there's missing shingles on a particular house, for example, and does it match the data loss, or is it from before? You can go on YouTube and look at see if the house was up for sale or the neighbor's house was up for sale, and they had a drone footage and nice video showing off the house, and that's usually we can track the date on that. Social media, definitely you can go to hashtag like AB storm, ON storm, or Saskatchewan storm. People post stuff on Twitter all the time, and that's a great source. The Weather Channel itself is a good source, and there's like several types of that around. And the news, there's lots of times where there's tons of news of a particular fire on the street. So if I'm investigating the house next door and what kind of damages it may have, I can sometimes actually see the fire. So Google Street View, one of the things that I do is, if you look over here where the arrow is, you'll see the latest date. If you click this little button, it'll show you historical Google Street Views as you progress. In Canada, mostly it's 2007. If the house is on a corner, go on the other street and do the same thing, because sometimes you'll have different photos from different dates. Because Google sometimes doesn't do all the streets all at the same time. They'll go east, west, or north, south, and then you miss out on some. So areas of interest that I'm looking for with those Google Street Views is, generally I want to know how old the building is, because it's a 15-year-old house. Then it's usually the first layer of shingles that are original. Historical street views. I'm looking for changes on the property. I'm looking for the roof, the windows, driveway, maintenance, previous damage, because unfortunately we have something called hard fraud, which is, an insurance fraud. That didn't really happen on this date, so we're just going to say we have a claim. But then there's soft fraud, which is very common, is that, we have to have a claim now, but we might as well get this little scar on the siding looked after and say it's part of that claim. Well, using Google Street View, we could probably sometimes find that damage and/or the satellite images. So I have a sample. Let me know if this opens, Keith, if you still see the view. Do you see the report?
Okay, we see the full report, etc.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to go to the photos to put this in context with everybody. This is what roughly what a report would look like that I would handle on a day-to-day basis. This is from the data loss. This is from the adjuster. They had a windstorm, and this chimney broke off and fell down onto the house. So I've included that. So going back to the examination of the photos, we label the photos, the street view, the front, southwest, front entrance. Then from there, in the forensic side, I want to know what's there, how's it installed, and all the measurements that are equivalent. So basically, I'm looking for this is a cedar roof. So I'm looking for alternating joints. I've got measurements, something I could reference later on. I'll show you where in the report I do that. I do the exposures. I measure the butts, because with cedar, we got to know, is it number ones, twos, or threes? What is the quality of installation? What's on it? What's behind it? The gaps, we measure the gaps. We take a look at the caps as well. We measure everything. And this one has a concave curve, a bell sweep. A little bit of historical on this one is it was clear the chimney hit that back area, but this is a big house. They felt they should have all new cedar shingles put onto it. And, that's a couple $100,000 worth of work. Cedar is repairable. It's still available. And a lot of insureds don't they want a new roof. So in this particular case, the insured was saying that they're picking up shingles on the ground all the time. And you can see that here on the bell curve, they are losing shingles. And this has nothing to do with the loss from the date of loss. Here's the shingles that he's picking up. So I'm measuring these as well, because I want to know, are they number ones? I don't see any knots, that type of thing. I want to be able to grade these. So when the loss is repaired, he gets what they had. And same thing with measurements and lengths. They all matter when you're grading cedar shingles. Here's what he's been picking up for the last month in his wheelbarrow. And then, again, I'll measure all those as well. Let's go back to the report here. Obviously, you can see I take a lot of photos. And I checked the flashings. They're copper, because you don't want to be putting back aluminum if we owe them for copper. I also talk about good stuff. When I see counter flashing done correctly and this is cut into the brick, I'm happy with that. And I will point that out, because I'm looking for, this was definitely not from the original. This was an additional upgrade. So I can see maintenance has been happening, and they've had good quality workmanship onto here. This copper drip edge, determining that's copper, that's good. There's a rain screen underneath, which is like we call it, it's basically a cedar breather rain screen. It's not that common, but on upper end projects, they lay that underneath the shingles, so they allow air to get right across. So I also comment on what's the conditions of the buildings. There's some warping cedar over here. The visual inspection only, I can't confirm there's wall flashings. I really couldn't find any signs of wall flashings under here, or step flashing of any kind. But I don't have X-ray vision, so I'll just call it out, just in case this gets opened up, because it's near to the chimney area. It is a copper valley. I verified that. And here's your soffits, cedar soffits. Downpipes are discharging on the roof. I had a little video that we flew a drone for our reports. I'll just speed through this one a little bit, guys. So our reports are dynamic as best as possible. I work with HTML, and we're trying to get out of the old-fashioned engineering reports that you're used to. We're trying to get it so it's visually dynamic. We have the ability also to have be able to digitize moisture mapping with CAD files, and record those live as we go through those projects. So we're working on as best we can with technology to improve the deliverables. With the videos, you can stop it and see where you want to be, because that's the chimney question that they repaired. Here it is here again. They made it shorter this time, and they recapped it. And here's some damages and temps that they did. And we can zoom in on all that with these type of reports. Here's the bell curve. And here's the interesting part of the bell curve. When they installed this, they cut the back of the shingles. And these are thin shingles, they're only 1/2 inch. They shaved it at the back, so they do this curve. But when it started wearing away, you get this honeycomb, like shreddies. And that's what's deteriorating at the bell curve. So this has nothing to do with the claim. However, because they wanted all new roof because of all this. It became part of the claim. And we just had to identify what is part of the claim, what isn't. Now, quickly through this, I do the introduction, the background, description of the building in detail. He had some blueprints there, so I took a picture of the blueprints and the details of the roof and the way the architect designed it, because I'm going to verify that information, that that's correct. That's through the site examination. I get into the weather data, and like I showed you on that one photo there, we get into measurements. So I did measure this roof, and using insurance software called Xactimate, we did do 3Ds and 2Ds on this one. Review and repair of estimates. They had a whole whack of materials from other contractors, so I reviewed them all. Then I called basically suppliers and tried to get the current costs and what would cost, and I'm determining from the damages that I've assessed. So because we're a catastrophe and appraisal company, we can go this far, not just engineering and or inspections. Discussions, we get into that, and we put some links to the Cedar Bureau. It's one of the best sites in the world, I think, out of BC. And then we get into the repair, suggested repair. They should have probably steamed it, but then I also put in links and videos to bending cedar shingles so they could see my point of view. I'm just using reference materials, so they're not just using my knowledge or experience. I'm referencing whatever I can. Same thing with the chimney flue. There was no spark arrestor, even though it's not part of the claim. I just want people to know, hey, I saw it, I'm going to make a note of it. Future project, there's stuff that isn't part of this job, so I added things to help them maneuver and get rid of fungus off the roof and things like that. So I do my best to help the insured as well. And then I got my conclusions and recommendations, and then we already went through the photos. Okay, any questions to this point, or we wait until the end?
We're waiting to the end, and we don't have any questions just yet.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go here. High nailing. This is my favorite defect. You can have a great roof, but the roofers aren't putting it on correctly. And generally, when I pull up to a driveway and I see high nailing, I can see it from the road. Where the shingles were removed off the roof, it's in the middle. It's generally because of installation issues, because wind generally takes things off at the eaves, or they take it off at the ridge. Then I'll look at that a little bit closer. But when they come out from the middle, it's usually installation issues. So you can see this house here. Generally, so the winds must have come in this direction most likely, and they pulled it from both sides in the middle. And you can see the shingle slippages and things like that. So I'll definitely look at this roof a little bit closer. Which of the following statements best describes the impact of high nailing on a roof storm damage? High nailing enhances the overall wind resistance of the shingle, reducing the likelihood of storm damage. High nailing increases the probability of shingles blow-offs during high winds because the nails are not properly placed in the reinforced nailing zone. High nailing has no significant impact on the durability and performance of roof shingles during a storm. High nailing improves the water shedding capability of the roof, thereby minimizing the risk of the related leaks. B, high nailing increases the probability of shingle blow-offs during the wind because the nails are not properly placed in the reinforced nailing zone. So let's talk about that real quick. I have a display here that I just want to show. With laminate shingles, there's two pieces to it, and where they overlay, this little white line that you're going to see on some of these other pictures is where they overlap. You're supposed to put the nail on the white line, so you're in the middle of the overlap. But when they do high nailing, they've nailed at the top. So they're used to 3-tab shingles, so they nail wherever they want. But if this is just an example, this is an unsealed shingle for this presentation. And say a wind comes rolling by, and this is unsealed, which happens a lot. You'll see it flapping in the wind. This can probably handle a couple storms. Eventually, you'll get a crease here, and this will blow off. There'll be a blow off. And this is high nailed. So, but if I put my thumb 1 inch from each edge on the overlap and I do the same thing, you can hear it being a lot less quiet. So that just shows the difference between high nailing and nailing on the seam. Just wanted to show that. And I just wanted to, this is the overlap here. Here's the white line. This is where you're supposed to nail, and this overlaps it over here. You see the 2-piece laminate shingle. So this is the overlap. These nail holes should have been right where my mouse is right now, and right here, right below. So you can see this was high nailed, and so it's not holding the whole thing. And here's the other half of this same shingle, and you can see here's the white line, and you can see that they nailed just above it. Okay, that's called high nailing, and that is so common. And here's your white line, and again, here's the nail, and the wind just pulls right off. This just gets pulled right off. Drip edge. It's the cheapest thing to put on a roof, but it's the first thing costs the most. You can get rotted plywood on the edge. Drip edge, depending on where you are, and in the States or in Canada, also can be served in different ways. Where where you put your eave protection could be on top or below. We could talk about granule loss. I go to a lot of claims where look at all the granules on the splash pad here. I need a new roof, and that's exactly what I hear from a lot of people. And so I go through, and after my investigation, I explain to them all about shingle loss. So I'm in the middle of a study right now that I'm working on. And what I've asked is my Haag friends to degranulate shingles for me. So this is on a full 3-tab shingle. There's 2 products on it. Usually you got sand and you got granules. This is what it represents, a full shingle for granules and sand for 1 shingle. This represents the exposed, the 3 tabs only. So this is the 3-tab exposure of the sand and the granules, which is roughly, again, the study's not finished, so I'm just going to go with rough numbers for this presentation. But basically, it's 3/4 of a pound per shingle. So I did a rough calculation. If you lost half the granules on a 2,600 square foot average house, that adds up to 936 pounds. And that's 44 bags of sand. So if you lost half your granules just on the exposed shingles, I should see 21 bags, basically. And I got my little disclaimer because I just did this really quickly before this meeting. And I don't know if I got the math right or wrong, because I'm not done with this. I'm hoping to show a picture of what this looks like at the end of a driveway when you lost 5% to 50% is the goal. All right, let's get into the twilight zone. In Fort McMurray, we got to see a bunch of different things. And here, an insurance adjuster was paying for new siding for a lot of homes because they were exposed to a little bit of heat. A house that 2-3 doors down from here caught on fire. And they had no explanation why is everything melting behind the siding. So they ended up paying for full wraps at 24 or probably more than 50 grand when it came to Fort Mac, because they kept upping the price. And what this was, at the end of the day, we actually found the corporate is a bird. He was stuffing dog food into the cracks of the siding. And then when it was exposed to a little bit of heat, it just started melting, and then the oils also expanded. So sometimes you see some weird things depending on when you're in the middle of an event, and you don't have the answer right away. And then I was dealing with a fire in Ottawa. Um, as you can tell, it's like a February, and it was 4 p.m., starting to get dark. And I'm in here, and I start doing my takeoffs and try to determine, the loss a little bit. And then and there's no lights. This is just my lights that I brought, and it's a pretty scary scene. So what happened was about 15 minutes in there, after I got in there, climbing downstairs over mattresses, over couches, and things like that, I get into the furnace room, and then this thing lights up in the back corner and starts singing "Wheels on the Bus." So I'm scared of clowns and dolls. So I bolt out of this place, jumping over everything that was in my way before, plus a huge hole that to get into this basement and out the door. I just never went back. So you get some strange things sometimes during some of these catastrophes. And that's it. Any questions?
No questions. But I got a few comments. First of all, here, I'm going to turn on my camera. Thanks for the quizzes. I got them all right, and every time that made me feel really good. I guessed all the answers from theory, and theory came through. So I'm glad there's good agreement between theory and professional practice. I'm glad about that.
I apologize. I'm terrible at reading these things. I'm terrible online. I have a lot more fun when I'm in front of the class. So I apologize to everybody.
No, that was great. That was great. I mean, I hope everyone online was trying to answer those questions as you asked them, because I think it makes the talk more engaging. Because you're well, gotta pay attention now. Um, and thanks for the news about increasing hail damage in Ontario. I didn't know that. We tend to think of Alberta, Calgary, and maybe eastern BC as hail country, and little splotches of hail elsewhere around the country. But I didn't know that it was getting more serious down around Niagara.
Yeah, what's going on is I was talking to someone, I can't remember from where, and about 15, 20 years ago, there was a shift in weather pattern from the central plains or where Montana is, basically the west, shifted north like 15,
Mm,
20 years ago. So Calgary started getting more hail and things like that, because I don't think it was that prevalent before my time.
mm,
Is just during my time into the insurance world that hail started getting really bad, just like fires in BC and stuff, right? I gone 4 years without smoke going into Calgary, and the next thing you know, it's every summer now.
right.
But what we think is going on here, talking to others in the weather world, is that a pattern has shifted north in the Central Plains into Ontario. So there's a possibility that we'll be seeing more tornadoes and severe storm events,
Mm,
just like Alberta did, years back. So
right.
obviously everything's a theory.
Right. So we got a question from an anonymous attendee. What are things to watch for with standing seam metal roofs?
Oh, okay. Well, the splits that they split open.
Can you
So on a standing seam, they overlap just like this. And then if a big enough hail hits it, this one will pop or this will crimp.
Hmm,
That's
okay.
the number one problem that you're going to see with that. The secondary problem with that a standing seam would be the vents, if there is any, and the accessories that are coming through the roof.
What about them?
And then they're weaker than the metal.
Hmm,
So you might find some. If anything's going to dent a standing seam, it's gonna break something else.
I see. Okay. Let's see. It was also really good to know about Nearmap and Eagle View and about the YouTube videos that people put up on listings. I never knew that before. I was always going to Google Earth Street View and satellite imagery on Google Earth and Google Maps. That's real good to know that there are higher resolution images out there.
Well, that's changing as well, Keith. A company called Spexy is currently droning. They got a seven-figure thing from BC government, and they're using drone operators like myself, and they are flying all of BC right now as we speak.
Wow.
And they're 90% done already. So they're the images that we're going to be getting from that service in the near future is going to be interesting and amazing. So now they've moved on to Florida and Texas. So the company's called Spexy,
How
if
do you spell
anybody
that?
wanted to look them up. I think it's
S-P-E-C.
SPEXI, maybe.
Awesome. Uh, and thanks for the introduction to high nailing. That was the first time I heard that term before. That was really informative. You said it was really common. Like how common?
Hugely common.
Yeah.
And my personal pet peeve is I think insurance companies should subrogating against roofers. You install this product wrong and it's blowing off. The insureds didn't want this claim, and now that they have $2,500 deductibles, they don't want to put a claim in. But the roofers are not doing their job, and it is more superior, so common, and even to the point where the level that I'm at, I look at the whole roof. I could tell on a four-man crew who the lead hand is and who the other three isn't, and who's the first one that they just hired off the street. And you could tell where they worked on that roof and how they nailed. And you could tell by the fourth one and the fourth nail in, um, just the angle that was set, and then you can see that same pattern actually somewhere else on the roof. Then you can say, okay, this one person, this anonymous person worked here, then he moved over here, and then he moved over there. And if I think this person is the weak link, and he's near that chimney flashing, now I'm tearing that apart to see, okay, I think the weak link worked on this chimney flashing, which is going to cause another problem.
Interesting.
That's how deep we can get into on the forensic side, determining, hey, how many people maybe were on here and how they nailed it on there. Not that anybody's paid me to do this. This is just what happens when you do it for so long.
Right. So our anonymous Cindy asks, what typical problems do you see with cedar board and batten siding?
Nothing, fresh wood. Basically, you're going to see splinters, and that can be sanded and restored. Wood swells. Uh, generally it's okay, but if it's painted, then it'll just be sanded and repainted. It's not that generally it's not that damaged.
Okay. Let's see. Um, you and I before we let people in, you and I were talking about what kills asphalt shingle roofs, and I related a story that a colleague told me, where the colleague said that all asphalt shingle roofs die after about 10 years because of thermal fatigue at the seal. That it might go on really well sealed, and but that age, just hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold will just work that seal until it falls apart, and it doesn't matter how long the warranty is. My colleague said you see these seals pooping out after about 10 years, and you said that is not true. So I thought that was really interesting. Could you sort of elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so when it comes to the seals, it depends when the roofing was installed as well. But if you're in a new neighborhood and it's late fall, early winter, and they installed these shingles, they're probably not going to seal till the spring when it gets enough heat, depending on the manufacturer and the brand. Um, the issue here is that if they didn't seal and there's a lot of dirt and dust present, it'll just form a thin layer under there, so it won't have a chance to seal appropriately. So when the spring comes, it will seal, but barely. But there's more things to this whole scenario. Is the manufacturers, some of them, they just don't seal. They don't do a very good job. Owens Corning has a duration shingle that seals extremely well. It won't come apart. GAF has Timberline that works really well as well. Malarkey has some of the best. You can install those shingles up to -5, which you can't do with any other shingle. So that's really important. But anyway, during the investigation, the easiest thing to do to determine if they've sealed or not is to lift them. And if they're shiny on the top one, if it's shiny, that means it didn't seal. It didn't seal at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if they broke apart, the bond has broken apart, well, then that's where your colleague might be partially right. And that could be related to the manufacturer's product not able to hold up.
Mm-hmm. But
Could be other reasons, but you got to look at that, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to say yes or no. I can't say for sure, but 90% of the time, I would say it's a no.
Okay. And so you
If
see
sealed correctly.
it, okay. So when you see a roof, an asphalt shingle roof that's been sealed correctly, are you saying it's not uncommon to see them 20 years old, 30 years old, getting closer to their warranty period?
Not a problem.
Not a problem. All right, good
Not
to
a
know.
problem at all. They'll stay down.
Awesome. So our anonymous attendee asked about hailstorms. Double or triple pane windows may look undamaged, but the seal has been broken. This might not be visible until next winter. Have you encountered this?
Yes. So windows, double pane and triple. Two things can affect them. One is wind pressure. So if you get a wind event and the window's big enough, you can pop a seal just with a wind event. But when it comes to you said hail, right?
Yeah, hail.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so back to the hail event. It's more about the shock, the thermal shock, because when hail comes through, it comes really cold. It might have been +30 in Calgary, and at 5 p.m. when the storm comes rolling through, which is around the time it shows up, it drops down to -5 really quickly, and then it gets covered in snowballs. So when it comes to actual hail and breaking the seals, we take a look at a couple things. We have to look at collateral in this case, because if you don't have a broken window, now how do you
Mhm.
prove this? First of all, can I prove this before actually the winter shows up and you got to start getting the frost in between? You can if you wait about 2-3 months, because when you break a window seal, unless it's really open and that humidity rushes in, you're not going to see this for a while. It's going to be such a minute crack that it's going to take 2-3 months to climatize in between the panes. On a triple, it's real easy because it'll be just the outside one, not the inside one, right? So if there's frost on the outside one, it could be related. But one way to determine this is the old-fashioned way, which is taking an ice cube and putting it on your window pane and leaving it on for a minute and a half, and then wipe it off with your cloth. And if there's a humidity inside the window, it'll stay there for at least a couple minutes. Now, the professional way, where I charge you more money, is I take a can of air spray that you use for a keyboard that you get at the dollar store at Staples, flip it upside down, and it shoots the liquid right onto the window. You just have to do a 5-second blast and do about 10 windows in a row, and then come back to your first one, start wiping it off. And if you can't wipe off the humidity in between, that seal is broken.
I see.
That's one way.
Neat
There's
trick.
another way, which is less known and a lot harder to do, which is putting tape, but the window has to be cold. This is a wintertime problem, and it has to be double pane windows inside the house. You can put tape along the edge, little tape pieces. It won't stick to where there's a hole, where there's a leakage,
Okay.
potentially. I'm not going to do it. No one's paying me enough to sit there and tape all these windows up.
Gotcha. An attendee asks, what type of roof is best at withstanding wind?
Oh, so I personally, a huge fan, after you're done with your 25-year warranty with your asphalt shingles is that you add metal to the top, interlocked metal panels.
Mm.
Because you get two things. One, you get also a weather protection no matter what happens because you have your old shingles on there. Then you have the very light and a panel that's interlocks. I think it's one of the best.
Okay.
Now, I'm not a huge. You could go concrete, but Unicrete closed in '97, I think. So you're not getting a lot of that. You can get clay. Those usually don't move either in a windstorm in our area. I'm
Mm.
not saying anything about Florida. I haven't. The only windstorms I've done south is in Puerto Rico.
Mm.
Slightly different construction methods over there. They do whatever they have to do.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, we don't have any more questions, and we've gone through all of my comments. There's no reason why we have to go the full 90 minutes. So, is there anything else you want to tell us? Anything you want us to, real important message you want to leave us with?
No, if you want, I just pick a topic and anything that you can imagine that has wind related. I can go over that, but other than that, not really. I think high nailing. I think everybody should just understand the construction methods and the application. I think is your number one problem. I know there used to be a video on here from the president there. An extra $200 will keep a roof on you during a storm.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember what year that was. I saw that. The problem is the roofers didn't install the roofing, correctly.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, and what would, I mean, since it's so clear where you're supposed to put the nail,
Yes,
what causes high nailing? Is it just, they're trying to
they
work real
they didn't
fast?
read they didn't read the package. It's
Oh,
on every package, and then the same thing, like consultants like myself, I'll recommend 6 nails instead of the manufacturer four.
yeah.
It gives you an extra 15% advantage if you go through some of the sheets at ICO. And I agree with it at the same time. But if you happen to miss one, at least you still got five more to go that holding down that shingle.
Right.
So I think that's sorry.
The same colleague who said thermal fatigue and the seal told me 6 nails, 4 nails doesn't matter because it's the seal that kills roofs. Is that right?
That's the start of it. That is I just the demonstration I showed you was an unsealed shingle.
Hmm.
What happens when the wind gets it? And that can go on for years until you get a decent wind, and then you get that crease, right? And then that's the problem. So it does start at the unsealed shingles. If those shingles were sealed, those 4 or 6 nails would have been fine.
Uh-huh.
However, if they unsealed because of thermal shock after 10 years, let's just put a theory to the table here, 6 nails would help
Okay.
at the end of the day. But then during a master, if you get a huge category type storm coming through, having the extra couple nails on there will make a difference if you save in your house or not. I think it will.
Okay.
It's not just as important as hurricane clips, on the on the trusses. There's so many things that we can do that don't cost a lot of money that can keep a house intact during an event. And then the old wives' tale, you know, leaving your windows open during a wind event.
Ooh.
That's still going on. I hear it every other day after an event. Oh yeah, I threw all my windows open,
Oh,
and
God.
that's that one has to die somehow.
Yeah.
Close those
I wonder,
windows.
I wonder if that's something where the insurance industry could help out their customers by just reminding them to close those windows. Actually, we got a bunch of new questions. An anonymous attendee asks, are ceramic tiles more resistant to hail than other types of roofs?
Ceramic tiles.
Yeah, are ceramic tiles more resistant to hail
Okay, but
than
not on roofs.
on
On
roofs?
on on roofs.
On ceramic roof tiles. Seems to be what
Oh,
they're
okay. All right. So the clay tiles.
clay
They're
tiles. Yeah.
they're they'll be clay.
Yeah, those
Um, they're
things.
supposed to be good up to an inch and a half
Uh,
hail, supposedly. And Unit Creek promoted that as well at an inch and a half. Um, the issue is if you look at the fine print of the sales sheets, if you go to say Owens Corning, I think that's the one I saw last year. There's a fine print on there that says if this has been exposed to hail at any time, the warranty is over.
okay.
Okay, and this goes on most manufacturers.
Uh,
If you read the fine print, as soon as it got exposed to hail, they're saying, I didn't warranty this. This isn't a class 4 shingle. This is not a malarkey product that we say you're going to have, defense up to inch and a half or inch or an inch and a quarter.
mhm.
Versus all the other manufacturing stuff, it says it right on there. You go through a hell, man, this is not warranted anymore.
Now, actually, that brings me to another question. Another thing that this colleague told me, that the UL 2218, the test protocol that gets used to put the little IR4, IR3 stamp on products,
Yeah.
um, that test doesn't really is not a good indicator of hail resistance. That even an IR4 shingle can be damaged by a 2-inch hailstone because the test really isn't all that good. What do you think?
Uh, okay, I'm going to say nothing about the test because I've not been part of any testing or how that's applied. But I
Uh,
could tell you, specifically on hail resistant shingles, is that it's the support below it is the problem. So, for
okay.
example, on a malarkey shingle that you spent a lot of money for it that's hail resistant, you're still going to have to replace all the caps. And the reason why is because there's no reinforcement underneath. So the hail just goes right through it
Uh,
because it's a soft SBS type material. So it's what it's sitting on is your issue.
okay.
I would say more than anything. Like just what's the base?
Well, I mean, for
So
most
when you're
shingles.
doing when you're doing the testing,
Mhm.
I think the test is fairly accurate at straight on. And they got what they wanted in from the field. The issue is that you didn't test the same shingle every year for 20 years after exposure outside.
Right.
I don't think you can do that. We don't have enough time, and no one's going to pay for that study. So the issue here is that what happens to the molecular structure of that shingle 5 years from now,
Right.
and will it still hold up against the ice ball testing when it was brand new out of the box?
But
And
well,
then the
I know that there's
conditions.
yeah, I know that there's one organization that our colleagues down in South Carolina are at IBHS. They're testing. They're building roofs out in there. They have this great big field, and it's like a shingle farm.
Yeah,
They've been putting out shingles for 10, 15 years on roofs, and it says and they'll have a product that they will harvest is their word, at 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, and I think I saw it may have seen it like a 30-year harvest date. So that organization, they are in it, they're in the testing game for the long haul. That's really cool. Let's see. So Alan Spidell, I'm getting a bunch of questions now. So people have sort of warmed up. Um,
that's Mr. Malarkey himself.
oh, okay. So Alan says pneumatic nailers are part of the problem and the speed of installation. Also, as mentioned, 6-nail installation will make it far more likely that some of the nails are where they should be.
I agree.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Alan.
Uh, Thanks, Alan. Um, let's see. An anonymous attendee says, how many roofing companies do you think are using drones to check roofs as a service?
Okay, so I is increasing every year. It's
Yeah.
getting much better. There was like 3,000 roofing companies in Canada. I don't know when I was looking at it in 98 or 99. So let's just say there's still 3,000. The drone usage is growing. DJI has some great products. They're very inexpensive, and but the problem is the technology. is, so for example, Eagle View has as drone technology as well, and they're using AI to determine marks on the roof.
Mm.
Last summer, we actually looked at a roof and reviewed it with an Eagle View drone, and we found that it marked up things that shouldn't have been marked up or was questionable. So drone work is awesome for wind damage, I'm gonna say, when it comes to wind damage, and not because of a tree hit it or anything like that. It's still good. I use drones on everything because I want my report to include everything. At the same time, the engineers that I work with, sometimes they want to see something that I didn't catch. So if I videotaped and droned it, they will be able to hone in on what they're interested in, especially when it comes to structure.
Mm.
And that's super important, especially, we do a lot of barn collapses and things like that. So that's super important. So drones are awesome and they're great. And now you're able to measure with them. And then we have ourselves at our company, we have an enterprise with a thermal camera on it as well. So now we're droning roof systems, and then we do that right at sundown. So
Mm.
1 hour after sundown, the roof is starting to cool down, but if there's water underneath that roof, it's still lit up yellow on our
Interesting.
thermal. So we can help determine, that's step one. That just helps. The problem is just like thermal cameras, you're supposed to verify. You've taken a thermal image, but now you need to put a water meter on there, or you
Mm.
need to open that up or do a core or get a pinned meter in there, determine is there water there. You just can't go by temperature. Sometimes it can fool you in that regard. So back to drones. A lot of roofing companies are getting, because they're using these images now for their reports to sell roofing. Now they don't have to climb the roof to sell a roof. You stand at the
Mm.
sidewalk, you fly it really quick, you add it to your software. Now you have the best digital package you have to sell that roof. That's changed the marketplace, and I think every roofer is almost doing that, and or ordering it from Eagle View or Roofar or Nearmap and other companies like that. But the problem when it comes to assessing real damage, at the end of the day, you need to walk it. You need to take a look at things. You need to open. So if I'm looking for hail damage on an asphalt product, you want to be able to lift up that tab. You want to see
Mm.
how is it installed. You might not be able to see the high nailing. When I see it from the street, like I talked about earlier, that's because all those shingles are laying on the ground. I can flip them upside down and see that they're high nailed before I even get on the roof, and I can drone that image, not a problem, and I can measure or satellite imaging for like Eagle View has one, or Hover is a good one as well. And we have all the measurements that we'll need, so you don't really need to get on the roof.
Mm.
However, when you're looking at further damage like hail, you want to see if the mat is fractured. So the only way to do that is to lift it. The other thing is you want to be able to comment on, is it sealed or not? Was it applied as per manufacturer's instructions? Because that's everything, actually. Was it applied exactly the way Malarkey and that Alan, has it right on every package? Was it done exactly like that? If it wasn't, it might have helped cause the problem to get worse
Mm.
in that regards. So I think that's super important. So drones are amazing. I have a thermal camera and a drone in my truck at all times, and then we use our thermal drones and more advanced technology when we need to get into different type of conclusions.
Well, your drone, is it have a 4K camera or
Oh,
what do you?
I've got everything. I got the Mavic Mini. So I started with the Phantom, and then I got the Phantom 2, then the Phantom 4 Pro. Then I ended up getting the DJI Mini, the DJI Mini SE. Then I got the Mini 2, broke about three of those.
Mm.
Then I got into the 3. Then for the 4 Pro, I have the Mavic Air 2S, and now we have the Enterprise. And we're about to get ourselves a nice $20,000 drone very soon. And it's called the Matt Rice T30, and it comes out of a box, flies, does your survey up to 7 kilometers, comes back in the box when it's done, so you can have a nap.
Yeah,
And
I think I've seen a video of that.
Yeah, well, we got that on order. So,
Cool. Let's see. Richard Everett says, thank you. Very interesting and well presented. Um,
thank
an
you.
anonymous attendee says the UL2218 test, that's the one that has to do with dropping steel balls from various heights
Okay.
to approximate the impact energy of a hailstone of the same diameter. The UL2218 test does not account for thermal shock. When you have a hail event, you also have a thermal shock. UL2218 is tested on new shingles in a lab at room temperature. So,
There
good
we
to
go.
know.
We got our answer.
Yeah, thanks. Uh, let's see. An anonymous attendee asks if a homeowner wanted to put a heavier roof tile on, what is the likelihood that the underlying roof structure can bear the weight? Is there a guidance document for the installers?
Yeah, so that's a manufacturing as well. You got to go through the manufacturing question. So to talk about that, let's talk about UrShield. UrShield is a rubber roof product. It comes in two forms. One is a light version, and then there's a heavy version. So if you had a 3-tab shingle on your roof and you put the light version on, through the manufacturing specs, they'll say, hey, it's probably no problem. And it's advised, it's a great product. Um, However, if they paid extra and wanted the heavy on there, which is actual solid rubber, unfortunately, as per manufacturer specs, that needs to be pre-engineered to handle that weight. You need an engineer to beef it up and sign off. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times that bypasses that, and because it's the manufacturer's not involved in the selling of these roofs.
Right.
So if the roofer didn't acknowledge that to the homeowner, you put a heavy product on there, it will break some trusses, especially when you get snow load.
Okay.
16 inches of snow is a lot of weight on a 26 square house. Now, the
Yeah.
16,000 pounds, just rough math.
Right. Cool. Good to know. All right. Let's see. Um, is there a particular type of brand of roof underlayment that you recommend?
Yeah, so there's a couple things on the go with that. So we're used to the 15-pound felt, and then
Yeah.
we got 30-pound that goes on at the eaves. That's been there longer than my dad's been, around. It goes way back, right?
Uh-huh.
We have synthetic uh, tarps, synthetic felt now. I prefer a breathable one. I am not a fan of anything that's waterproof. I want it water resistant and one way. So just like Tyvek on a home, it's breathable one direction, right? It's got to allow moisture to leave. Because
Mm.
what's going on today, and I'm seeing a lot of this as a consultant, is that they're pretending we're in Florida and they're spray foaming the underside of a roof. And then that's a vapor barrier in between wood, which is generally 6 to 26% humidity. On the other side of that, on the roof deck, these builders are selling a product called Blueskin, which is another waterproof membrane.
Yeah.
And then they put their shingles on top of that. What's
Yeah.
going on is you created a vapor lock. So you can't let any moisture out. What's going to happen with the wood? It's going to turn black and lose its integrity completely. Well, that's happening today all over the place. And same thing with these R2000 homes. If you seal things up too tight, now we got health problems. And now we got
Mhm.
house problems. And if you didn't do the window flashing 100% proper, now you got that whole wall that's got to come out underneath that window because the OSB product can't handle that moisture over 2-3 years. So any product that can breathe will help.
What about that stuff that's sticky on the underside? You don't have to use nails.
Yep.
It's you unroll it. Is that the
Yep.
blue skin?
That's Blueskin or Ice and Water Shield that you might
Uh,
you might hear. That's another name brand. That's what we put on the eave. So in Canada here, we're supposed to have that 24 inches beyond the warmer winter side. So if you have
yeah.
your 2x4 wall and you have a 12-inch overhang, you need to be 24 inches past that. So a 12-inch
Yeah.
overhang, you can do a 3-foot roll, but then you also use that product in the valleys. And then you also use it during transition. So if you got a 612 moving to a 312, and then for 312s, you use 2 layers of that
Mhm.
as well. So there's different accesses and uses for that.
Mhm.
But again, you don't want to create a vapor lock from the underside. That's the issue here, is just keep an eye, where's the water going? If you just, whatever construction you're doing, from anything that has to do with buildings, so where's the water going to go? Because there's water. There's, same thing with masonry, right? There's water for 50 years coming out of there. Where's that going to go next? So if you seal it too tight and you got nowhere for it to go, it's going to wreck something.
Okay. Well, okay, so I think we pooped out our attendees. We've got no more questions. So at this point, I'm gonna say thanks again. I'm gonna remind our attendees about next month's talk. That's July 12th. Mohammed Fareshtapour is going to give us lessons about how cities around the world do climate resilient stormwater management. I'm going to remind you again that Patrick's PDF of Patrick's deck and a video of his presentation and this talk will be available on ICLR webpage by probably Monday afternoon at www.iclr.org/workshops. Patrick Foisey, thank you so much. This has been a great pleasure. I really like these ones where we've got a lot of time to chat and to go into details.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks. Have a good summer and see everybody next week or next month, rather. Bye, everyone.